You're listening to the Journey podcast. The Journey is a ministry of Southcrest Baptist Church for those in college or college-aged. We hope this podcast helps you find your greatest pleasure and purpose in Jesus.
What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning into the Journey podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Tate's here today. He's back.
I'm back by popular demand.
And for the first time ever, I get to sit with Tate at this table. I'm so excited.
It's such an honor.
I'm so pumped up.
Yeah.
It's going to be so much fun. Have you had a good week?
I have had a good week. I've just full of studying.
Oh, yeah?
No, that was very sarcastic. It's very...
You're not studying?
No, I am studying. It's just not as good as it could be.
Yeah, I feel you. When are finals?
Finals are in the first week of December, but midterms have already kind of...
Okay, midterms are what you're dealing
midterms are
with
kind
right
of
now.
happening now. So I've got a test on Thursday and a test on Friday.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fun.
So
You got this.
hopefully.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, well, so today, this morning, whatever time you're listening to this podcast, we're talking about Tuesday night, what Tyler preached. And last night, because this is Wednesday, oh man, this is like Inception. Where are we going? I was not able to like really listen to very much of the sermon. And so I was thinking maybe you could kind of help me learn what we're supposed to be talking about today.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about relationships and intentional relationships, but I wonder if we could just start out by like, you want to give me like a little overview, catch me up real quick?
Yeah. Like you said, the main thing was just that, people who follow Jesus pursue intentional relationships and what that looks like. And I think like one of his points was like disciples tell the truth in love. So there are people who are like in their like closest knit group. And then that's really the only point I remember, but I know I know it was all about like how we should treat one another based off of how Jesus treated his disciples. So
yeah, nice. The few notes that I got, one was that the intentional relationships, at least at one point he said it this way: intentional relationships will tell the truth even if it hurts. That was really good. Referenced Matthew 16. And Holland about to run across the street. I feel like that's my son Whitaker.
yeah.
Is like one and a half, and he just entered a phase where he's doing that. So like that, that was good. I connected with me really well, because right now like we'll be walking on the street going to Nana's house or something like that in our neighborhood, and he'll just like with confidence and determination will just take a sharp turn and start walking across the street, right? I'm like, where are you going? And got to grab him and pull him back. And so, yeah, Tyler told the story about Holland. You should go listen to the sermon. But about Holland, like trying to walk across the street and not pay attention, a car come in, and that he could say, Holland, stop, right? Like loud, or he could think, well, I don't want to hurt her feelings. So like, I don't want to be harsh. But obviously like there's danger, imminent danger that he can help her avoid. So yeah, I think that was really good. That was a really good point about that. But what else? Like, what else do you remember? Like, can kind of catch me up? Like some other key thoughts that I caught in the notes that like the 10 minutes that I was there, were intentional relationships accept people as they are. The one we just said about telling the truth even if it hurts. And then the other one that I caught before I had to go get ready to go out for the response was intentional relationships emphasize restoration.
Yeah.
So what else do you remember kind of before and after that, or in mid that like can kind of help me be caught up?
I think those are I think you only used 3 points.
3 points?
Yeah.
Maybe I saw more than I thought.
Yeah, I think, he just talked a lot in between the different points. So it made it seem like a little bit more, but I think those were the only 3.
Have you ever had to tell somebody something that is hard, a hard truth, knowing that it's going to maybe even do damage to the relationship, but have you ever had to do that?
I have had to do that. And one thing that Jarrett told me recently is that in the student ministry, they say, if you don't address it, you endorse it.
Yeah.
And so that it's just a tricky situation because normally I'm not one to, thrive in conflict. I'm not a person to like be really good about making the right decisions, but normally I'll be the quote unquote good, bigger person and just kind of settle it, but not in the right way. But I have had those situations where, I've had to tell people how it is, and, normally they do get pretty defensive because they know it's true. And, but it ends up working itself out. Like they'll be mad for like a little bit, but then realize that they really needed to hear that. So
I think, that's like, makes me think of, that definitely is true a lot. Like when you have to say something that might be painful to someone, like the reality is people don't want to be hurt. Right. So, that can definitely go negatively, but something that I've noticed, I wonder if you've noticed this in moments where you've had to say something difficult, or someone's had to maybe it's on the reverse, where you've been on the reverse end of it, where like sometimes people are actually genuinely like recognize and appreciate what you're trying to do. And yeah, obviously like you can't guarantee that that's always going to happen, but just, it makes me think of worship team, right? Since we're both on the worship team.
Yeah.
Right. In our process of bringing on new team members, we're real upfront about, hey, we're going to give honest feedback, so that we can help you grow. It makes me think of a story I heard recently from Clay from Live Oak, a good friend of mine in All City Worship. And Clay told me a story about having to tell someone that they needed to improve in some areas, and he was real nervous about that. And he said that when he like first started to tell that story, or first started to address that problem, he said he's so nervous. He said, and this person like starts to cry, and of course it's like, oh my gosh, worst nightmare. I've crushed their dreams, right? Like, and he said no, like he was so blown away because they like look up in tears and they're like, thank you. Like no one has been honest with me about that, and thank you so much. Like I just need somebody to tell me the truth. And anyways, so I think that's a good like other side to that of like, for sure that happens where you got to be ready if you're going to be that intentional friend, ready to say things even when it might hurt. You got to be ready for that to maybe cause a rift in the relationship. But I think it's also helpful to point out that it doesn't always turn out that way. Sometimes people are like really appreciate that you're willing to be that type of friend for them and be honest with them. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had any experiences like that?
Yeah.
Maybe on either side of it?
Yeah. I've been on the receiving end of kind of that situation that you've talked about, where like one of my good friends just kind of called me out on a lot of the things that I was doing that was contradicting. This is whenever I was like coming back to my faith, like my freshman year of college. And I was saying all these things and like going to a college service and reading my Bible, but a lot of my actions like didn't reflect that. And so they're like, hey, I know that you have kind of said some of these things about what I do. So like now it's kind of my turn to pull the Uno reverse card on you. But, and I was really receiving of that because I knew deep down like what I was doing, and I knew that it was contradictory, but it meant a lot that it came from an outside source, not from like my own mind. Yeah. But
yeah, when there's a relationship there, which sounds like in that situation there really was, like when there's a relationship there, and again, it's not always guaranteed, but like, I think it, like again, when that's true, there is a history, right? Mm-hmm. What's the term in Integris that we do? I think it's a relational currency or something like that is maybe what they say. Mm-hmm. Like when you've got history with someone, I think more times than not, actually, approaching someone respectfully and again from a place of love to call them out maybe on something is a lot of times at least in my experience, received well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think most people realize, even if they're, it's prickly at first or whatever, but most people realize that only a true friend is gonna kindly address something like that. Anyways, dude, something else. So something else, like, again, this is like right when I was able to get into the venue and sit down last night. Was when he was wrapping up the key thought of intentional relationships accept people as they are. So he may have talked about this, but I like to spur more conversation. Wonder it might be helpful to ask, like, does accepting people as they are mean endorsing everything that they do?
I don't think so. I think like the way that I understood it is like to be fully known by your like community and the people who you have relationships with, like that's one thing that I really appreciate, that I can sit down with like my core group and just like spill how I feel and like my testimony, and that they would still like view me the same. But going off your question, I think honestly, like if it's true, if it's a true intentional relationship and they might be doing something that you might not agree with, I think that you can voice your concern or your opinion. But ultimately, like, let's say like before you knew that y'all are like super close. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that after you like voice his opinion, like you would treat them any way differently, because like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's a hard line to walk. I don't know.
Well, I think you're onto it. Like, right, the second point about telling the truth is obviously right. It's like, so obviously we're not saying that that we like affirm and support and praise every action that a friend could do, because right, that's what that point is talking about, that we're gonna tell the truth. And oftentimes what we're referring to is like, hey, our brothers, sisters walk in sin, or just kind of doing something hypocritical or whatever, there's something that hurts you personally, and you're like, you want to tell them because it's like you don't want that to harm your relationship long term. So obviously we're not, obviously I guess the answer to that would be like, no, it doesn't, accepting them. So I know that Tyler mentioned his friend, I forget what his name was.
Hassan.
That's right, Hassan. Like, who's from Iran, I think, is what he said, and that was saying that if he accepted Jesus, he could be arrested if he went back home, and like disowned by his family. So maybe you could kind of help me catch up on what was Tyler's angle on that point about accepting people as they are, if it's not endorsing every sin or activity that they could be a part of.
Basically, he just like his main way of just like being there for him was just to do life with him. Like eat dinner with him, get coffee, just have conversations with him, and just to be a light in his life. And then ultimately, he said that he called him at like midnight and just said that like, I believe in Jesus. And I think we sometimes like underestimate like our example to people, because I think whenever you have that intentional relationship, like I know from like myself, like I admire all like my close community and like what they do, and just how they carry themselves has like a huge impact on like how I carry myself, like if I'm around them, or just how I've seen them act. And I think it's just whenever you're meeting these people where they're at, and in your close friends, it's just do life with them. Like you don't really have to do anything too special.
Yeah.
And I think if that relationship is meant to be, it'll just kind of naturally happen. And I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really well stated. Like, you're just caring for them, like being a friend. Like, I love the idea of like, you got to be a friend to make a friend. And so like, if you're trying to gain, kind of going back to that relational currency thing, you're like trying to, it's not I feel like it makes it sound too businessy, like, and it's like it's this, because that's definitely not the intent or the heart, right? But like you're trying to build a relationship. So I mean, yeah, every relationship we should see this way, right? So like trying to build a relationship so that we can, positively influence people and be influenced by people, right? So like, so trying to make a friend at school who maybe doesn't believe in Jesus, you can be a friend to them, right? Without, again, kind of like endorsing every behavior or belief that they have.
Yeah.
And I mean, think of it like, when I was, I'm sure this is still a thing, but like when I was in college, it was like something we would talk about a lot. It was like, cause I knew people that were like this, that was like really all about like, hey, my mission field, I'm going to make it my mission field to go to the bars or whatever, and I'm not saying that like you couldn't do mission work where you're trying to help people that are in staying up late in bars or something like that, but like just trying to like draw that fine line, I guess, between endorsing behavior, endorsing sinful behavior, drunkenness or whatever, and just being there for someone as they are, becoming their friend, being kind to them, so that you can be like a friend should be, right? Be there for them when they need you the most, right? Like another thing that like I think about so much is the like need to know, need to grow. That like that's why we want to just be there for people and be ready, so that like when they're hurting or they have big questions, we're right there ready to go. Gosh, I've been there before too, and I'm here to cry with you, and I love you, and let me tell you about Jesus, right? Like, because he's my healer. And but anyways, I just think it's a helpful thing that kind of like thing to differentiate on. It's like where the line is there.
Yeah.
Which I guess that takes us to that last point, the emphasizing restoration.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, we're there for each other. And how did Tyler wrap it up?
He kind of, I'm trying to think of the example that he used, or the piece of scripture that he used.
I wish I could hear clearly everything that he says when I'm like going back and getting up to play behind him, and I try to pay attention, but between trying to play or whatever, like I always kind of get little snippets. But what did he say?
I should have brought my notes.
Yes. Or I should have had better notes. Yeah.
But, I think just like what he meant by that is like,
he went to John. That's what it was, right?
Yeah, it was. He used
21.
Yes, Peter's example of denying him, I think. And he was talking about like how even though he denied him like 3 times, he still like sought after him and still didn't draw the line at, okay, you did this to me and now we're done. Yeah. It's like always seeking to try and pursue them even if they're not really giving you the same. I don't know, but that's something that I've kind of felt recently, because like there'll be someone who just doesn't seem like they're giving as much as you're giving into like a friendship, and that can definitely get you down. I mean, I know it has for me, because it just like makes you think like, why wouldn't they care? Because like I care so much about them. But I think it's just important just to keep, I don't know, like we've talked about before, just being there for them and loving on them and caring for them, because that's really all you can do. You can't really.
I feel like that relates a little bit to something that we've talked about in my small group, my home group that I'm in, about marriage. But I think it definitely relates to this in friendships. That right, like that a danger for marriage a lot of times is that you start kind of doing that. You start keeping score, and obviously there's like, it's a little different when you're talking about relationships. I mean, certainly if you're in a friendship where someone is just manipulating you and abusing you and take all the time, obviously that's different, you know. You don't have to maintain that friendship, at least in a close way, if they're going to continue to treat you that, for sure. But relating to what you're saying and what I'm thinking about with marriage, it's like when we spend all day thinking about, it's an example I always give, like I said about marriage, is like it's your turn to apologize. Because I feel like anybody that is married, listen to that, you've been there before, where you're like, I apologized the last however many times, is what you're thinking in your head. It's like, it is your turn to apologize to me. Yeah. Start the restoration, right? But when we think about that, it's so selfish.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, and you're not, that's not restoration, right? Like, because even if your spouse or their friend, right, like, does apologize, you either like feel like a jerk or like you can't accept their apology because you had built up this like thing in your head where you're like crossing your arms, you know what I mean? Like figuratively and literally, you're like crossing your arms and like, okay, it's your turn. Yeah. And so you're not even like receptive to restoration anyway. So it's like, yeah, obviously barring the, abusive friendship, right? It's always going to be like the Christ-like approach, the better approach, like the more, productive and restorative approach to always be like, you know what? I can humble myself, and I'm gonna set aside the score and be a friend, right? And not really like expect or like demand that like they show me this kindness or whatever. Like, I'm just gonna seek restoration and invest in my friends. But
I think too, like kind of what I was talking about, I'm really quick to like, the second that they don't show the equal amount of like interest in the relationship, I like jump to the conclusion like, oh, okay, so like they're just kind of over me. Like they don't really like me anymore. That's perfectly fine. That's just where my mind tends to go. But kind of like what we've just been talking about. I think it's okay to address it, but then still extend grace. And what Tyler said last night, what I finally remembered. He said, like, whenever you extend grace in those circumstances, like that's the most Christ-like you'll ever be. It's like giving grace to people that you think don't deserve it. And whenever you think of it like us, like we don't deserve God's grace, but He just freely gives it to us. And so, I think that was a cool point too, to just, address it, be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is how you make me feel, but I'm going to still pursue this relationship just because I care a lot about you.
Dude, yeah, that's so good. Yeah. You said we don't deserve grace, but God gives it. That's awesome. Yeah. Dude, I think that's a good way to wrap it up right there. Yeah. That's good stuff. Man, hey, mic drop. Yeah, mic drop. Get it, Tate. Thank y'all for listening. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Our goal with this podcast is to help you find your greatest pleasure and purpose in Jesus. And so if this has helped you do that, just really invite you and encourage you to share this with a friend or review it if there's a place to review, or like it, or whatever you need to do on whatever platform you're doing to let the algorithms and your friends know that it's a good podcast and you like it. We love y'all. And you're sent.